and a little bit of a liking to you, so to speak. As a competitor, do you thrive on just being able to silence the crowd the way you did in the game that you had?
I love it. And when they chant Luka sucks, it gets me going, man. It's even better.
The Dallas Mavericks take Game 5 on the road against the Oklahoma City Thunder thanks to a massive bounce-back performance from Luka Doncic and getting some help from his buddies like Derrick Jones Jr. This is Inside the Mavs. Welcome to Inside the Mavs, presented by Aura. I'm your host, Kevin Gray, pre- and post-game host on the Dallas Mavericks Radio Network. Appreciate you joining me here for the latest episode of Inside the Mavs. Make sure you download and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts for free. Give it a 5-star rating and write a review for it while you're there. You can find it on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. And if you're watching this on my YouTube channel at Kevin Gray Sports, make sure you like and comment on the video and subscribe to Kevin Gray Sports on YouTube. And you can find me on Twitter at Kevin Gray Sports. You can also find the Dallas Mavericks with a 3-2 series lead after taking Game 5 on the road, 104-92, thanks to an incredible triple-double from Luka Doncic, Derrick Jones Jr. contributing with 19 points, and the Mavericks dominating on the glass, 46-33, as they are able to bounce back after what was a devastating loss in Game 4 at home to the Thunder, where they were not able to make their free throws down the stretch and ultimately gave away Game 4 at the AAC. They come back in Game 5 and take it on the road to set up a closeout game on Saturday night at the American Airlines Center, continuing to display the resilience that we've seen from this team all season long. And it's fitting that they were able to get this Game 5 win on the 2-year anniversary of their 33-point destruction of the Phoenix Suns in Game 7 of the Western Conference semifinals on the road. You remember in that series, the Mavericks had gotten down 2-0 and ultimately won it in 7 games, where Luka Doncic scored 27 of his 35 points in the first half. And he was back to himself in Game 5. You heard and saw reported that Luka Doncic got out to his pregame workout a little bit earlier, and Derrick Jones Jr. talking about it postgame, that he was knocking down his shots, so you could tell that Dončić was locked in, and he was absolutely dialed in for the Mavericks when they needed him most, and the Mavericks were able to find themselves getting a huge road win to be able to take a 3-2 series lead. We know that the winner of Game 5 and best-of-7 series in the NBA playoffs go on to win the series over 82% of the time. So a pivotal game that the Mavericks obviously needed to get, and were able to do so by getting the Oklahoma City Thunder, taking them out in game number 5. And obviously for the Mavericks, who had a 10-point lead at halftime, we talked about what Luka Doncic was able to do. We'll talk more about that throughout the course of this show. But when you start thinking about what the Mavericks were able to do from a defensive standpoint, holding the Thunder to under 100 points in this game. You think about the defense that they played in Game 4, where they held the Thunder to 100 points. The defense continuing to be the story for the Mavericks in this series against the Oklahoma City Thunder, where you look at what the Mavericks did defensively, holding the Thunder to just 25% from 3 and also just 42.5% from the field overall. Meanwhile, the Mavericks doing what they had to do, shooting the ball much better. They shoot nearly 53% from the game for the game, and also 40% from downtown, going 14 of 35 from 3. But most importantly in this game as well, you look at what they did from the free throw line. They went 10 of 13, only missing 3 free throws in the 13 opportunities that they had. We know what they did in Game 4, or the lack thereof, from the free throw line, where they missed 11 of their 23 free throws that they took. But for the Mavericks, they saw the Thunder in that first quarter jump out to an 8-2 start, but they responded with a 9-0 run, capped off by Luka Doncic's jumper that gave them the lead at 11-8. And again, the aggressiveness at which Luka Doncic and Derrick Jones Jr. came out in that first quarter. They scored and combined for 18 of the 24 points that the Mavericks had in that first period, as Derrick Jones really got off to a really nice start, scoring 8 of the first 14 points. And we've talked about this throughout the course of this series, whether it was PJ Washington and what you saw him do, especially in games 2 and 3, to really help the Mavericks be able to get what was a 2-1 series lead at that point. Someone else was going to have to come with Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving to be able to provide that third scoring that the Mavericks would need to be able to win games in this series. And for a second straight game, it was Derrick Jones Jr. backing up the 17-point game that he had in game number 4. He had 19 in game 5. He knocks down the three-pointer that ended that 8-2 start by the Thunder. Luka Doncic getting into the act. He got the tough one-handed jumper on the left side to increase the Mavericks lead to 11-8, and that came with about 7.5 minutes left in the first period. But it was Derrick Jones Jr. who continued his great play in that first quarter. He knocked down his second three-pointer of the first quarter that gave him a 14-10 lead. And one person I want to make sure that we shout out, especially for his play in game 5, Jaden Hardy, who came in, got the minutes in front of Dante Exum, and you saw how effective he was able to be. He got a bucket with a running floater that increased the Mavericks lead to 20-15, and then was able to work the pick and roll with Daniel Gafford and was able to hit him for an alley-oop that eventually gave the Mavericks a 24-20 lead with just under 2 minutes left in the first quarter. I thought his minutes were extremely good. He is always, of course, looking to score and has the ability to do so. But if you've listened to this show and you've watched me and you have followed me and Grant throughout the course of the season, the things that we've talked about with Jaden Hardy, his ability to become that much better of a playmaker. And you saw that in game 5, his ability to be able to get into the lane and be able to finish it off with Daniel Gafford, especially with that alley-oop. And the Mavericks were able to lead 24-22 at the end of that first quarter. The Mavericks doing a great job containing Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Yes, I know the Mavericks saw the Oklahoma City Thunder really dominate them on the offensive glass with the 5 offensive rebounds that they had in that first quarter. But at the same time, they held the Thunder to just 39% from the field and 36% from 3 in that first quarter, as Shai Gilgeous-Alexander only had 4 points for the Oklahoma City Thunder. And again, getting contributions from other guys was massive in this game. And again, the headliners, will be the Derrick Jones Jr.'s of the world. Derek Lively, who had a big double-double in this game as well, knocked some big free throws down the stretch in the fourth quarter. PJ Washington was able to get things going, especially in the third quarter. The Jaden Hardy minutes were absolutely crucial, especially with the struggles of Dante Exum throughout the course of the playoffs. You give credit to Jason Kidd for pushing that particular button, and it worked for him, and it was paid off by the play of Jaden Hardy. So wanted to definitely make sure, as you were watching the game and as we have this conversation here, that we definitely shout out the work of Jaden Hardy and what he was able to do, especially in that first quarter, to really stabilize things and coming off the bench for the Dallas Mavericks. Much more on this game because of the way that Luka Doncic was able to play. PJ Washington getting things going a little bit later on. He had a double-double as well. But Derrick Jones Jr. continuing his terrific play in this postseason and doing so in Game 5. But before we get there, let's hear from today's sponsor of our video and our podcast, and let's hear from Aura. Today's video is brought to you by Aura. Do a Google search on your name and email address to see how much information comes up about you. I was devastated by the amount of information that I could be seeing searching my name and profile, and I knew then I needed to be protected for not just myself, but also for my family. Data brokers sell your information to scammers, spammers, and anyone else who may want to target you. Your full name, email, home address, health records, your relatives, it's all out there. That's why I've been using Aura, the sponsor of today's video. Aura shows me which data brokers are selling my information and automatically submits opt-out requests for me. Cleaning up my information not only helps reduce the amount of spam I get, but it protects me from hackers who could use this information to help them access my social media accounts, bank accounts, and other sensitive information. Aura also does so much more to protect me and my family from online threats that I can't see. It's really easy to set up, so I don't have to download several different apps to get things like antivirus, VPN, password management, parental controls, identity theft insurance, and more. I get everything at one affordable price. You may already have one of these tools already, But not having Aura is like locking the front door and leaving the back door wide open. Aura is always on, doing the hard work to protect me and my family so I can focus on other tasks with peace of mind. I value my privacy and I value yours. You can go to aura.com/Kevin Gray to start your 2-week free trial. Please see the link in the description. Back here on Inside the Mavs, thank you for hanging out with us through that spot there, and thank you to today's sponsor of our video and our podcast, in Aura, as the Mavericks get the 12-point win on the road to take a 3-2 series lead over the Oklahoma City Thunder and put the Thunder on the brink of elimination with a closeout game on Saturday night at the American Airlines Center, detailing, of course, how the Mavericks were able to get it done, shooting well from the three-point line, being better in terms of their overall field goal percentage, but Luka Doncic stepping up in a massive way with his big triple-double to be able to help Dallas get the win, but also Derrick Jones Jr. providing a terrific lift for this Mavericks team, not just the defense that he continued to play, but especially on the offensive end. And as we go to the second quarter, the Mavericks are up by 2 to begin that second period. The Thunder had pulled it to within 1 at 28-27, just a minute and a half into the period. But the turning point of this game for the Dallas Mavericks and what they were able to do, yes, they had the 2-point lead going into the second quarter, but this is where the game turned for Dallas, and especially going into halftime. The Mavericks would go on a 13-0 run to take what would be a 15-point lead eventually for the Mavericks. You saw them start 5 of 5 from the field in the first 3 minutes of that period. It was a 13-0 run capped off by Luka Doncic layup in transition that had him up 40-27. They would outscore the Thunder 21-11 in the first 8 minutes of the period, as they held the Thunder to just 1 of 6 from 3, 30% overall from the field in the first 8 minutes. And that was the turning point of this basketball game. The defense that the Mavericks played in shutting the Thunder down, holding them to just 22% from 3 and 40% overall from the field, and what they were able to do on that 13-0 run. Luka Doncic getting that started, obviously, with what he was able to do. The play of the game, him throwing that three-quarter court alley-oop to Derek Lively for the punch at the rim that had the Mavericks up by 8 at 35-27. That was something that you saw plenty throughout the game, whether it be in the first quarter with Jaden Hardy working the pick-and-roll alley-oop with Daniel Gafford, Derek Lively finishing with an alley-oop from Luka Doncic, and then another one, like we mentioned, the three-quarter court pass. The vertical game got going for the Dallas Mavericks in Game 5. That is something that the Thunder have been trying to take away in this series, trying to limit the vertical game with Luka and or Kyrie, and in this case, Jaden Hardy being able to finish off the pick and roll by throwing alley-oops for guys like Daniel Gafford and Derek Lively to finish at the rim. That got going in a big way in Game 5 and really changed the dynamic of the flow offensively for the Mavericks and how they got after the Oklahoma City Thunder. But then Derrick Jones Jr. continuing his strong play, drilling another three-pointer that had them up by 12 at 45-33 with just under 6 minutes left in the first half. And then Dončić hitting another three-pointer himself, putting the Mavs up by 15 at 50-35 with 2:44 left in the first half. They would take a 10-point lead into halftime, much like how they had a double-digit lead in game number 4. One of the things that I felt like going after Game 4, even despite the loss, and I felt it at the end of the first half of Game 4 between the Mavericks and the Thunder, is that I feel like I know who the better team is. And it's the team that's had a double-digit lead at halftime in Game 4 and a team that had the double-digit lead at halftime in Game 5. That's the Dallas Mavericks. And the way that they approached Game 5 with the aggressive mentality led by their superstar was absolutely massive. In fact, Luka Doncic talking about that mentality and the aggressive approach that he wanted to take that rubbed off on his teammates that you saw that was evident throughout the course of Game 5. Here's Luka Doncic talking post-game about what the mentality of he and his Mavericks team was going into this pivotal 5th game.
Luka, you guys have been really good after a loss. Just what does it say about the resiliency of this team and just the focus and the mindset, like you said, coming into tonight?
Just our mentality. We know the last game we played against them at home, we let it go. It was our mistakes, and they hit shots. So our mentality just in the playoffs, it's 1st to 4. So You got to win 4 before they do, so you got to go game by game.
So an aggressive approach from Luka Doncic and his teammates, knowing that Game 5 was a must-win. We heard at P.J. Washington before Game 4 saying that the Mavericks were treating Game 4 like a must-win. They didn't finish it like that, but they did so in Game 5. They were able to take what was a 10-point lead into halftime. And one of the things that I wanted to highlight, especially from the first half, Dereck Lively and his defense was absolutely terrific. At one point, forcing a shot clock violation, then had a block on a Lou Dort three-pointer that led to a Kyrie Irving three-pointer that he was able to drill out in transition. And I thought, again, we mentioned the vertical game getting going for the Mavericks, but again, it was the defense led by their center and Dereck Lively, the perimeter defense that the Dallas Mavericks were playing and shutting down guys like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and others. You look at what the Mavericks did in the first half and what they did to OKC. They held the Thunder to just 30% from downtown and 40% overall from the field. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in that first half only had 10 points. He was 5 of 10, but at the same time did not have the kind of effect that you want the Thunder, if you're a Thunder fan, to have on a game like this where they needed him. And I thought defensively the Mavericks were able to get after it and holding the Thunder to just the 44 points in that first half. And again, showing what they have been showing throughout the course of the second half of the year is that this team is built on their defense. We have talked about it plenty during that 16-2 run that they had in their most meaningful games. They became the number 1 defense in the NBA, and it has carried itself throughout the course of this postseason. In fact, with the Game 5 win, the Mavericks are now 4-2 on the road this postseason. Again, just another example of the resiliency that this team has showed in the second half of the year and really throughout the course of the year to pick themselves up off of the way that they lost in Game 4 to be able to go on the road and get another win, now 4-2 on the road this NBA postseason. And that gets us to the second half, because we mentioned about the 13-0 run that the Mavericks were able to have to be able to establish that double-digit lead. Luka Doncic, what you saw him do in the first half, he had 17 points, going 7 of 11 from the field, getting his three-point shot going again, where he was 2 of 4 from the field. But Derrick Jones Jr., a perfect 6 of 6 with the 15 points that he had. They were the only 2 guys in double figures in Game 5 in the first half. And without Derrick Jones just scoring, especially from the three-point line, the Mavericks would have been in a much different spot as far as this game was concerned. But again, when you come out as aggressive as the Mavericks were from the outset, setting the tone in what has been a physical series, a knockdown, drag-out series, the Mavericks were the ones to be able to not only execute on the defensive end, but most importantly, be able to knock down shots on the other end to really put pressure on the Thunder. And you saw in Game 5 as well what the Thunder were attempting to do and what they've been trying to do throughout the course of this series, which is make Kyrie Irving a passer, get the ball out of his hands to try to make other guys beat them. The same with Luka Doncic at times, doubling him to force the ball out of his hands to make other guys beat them. That is why it's been so important when P.J. Washington has had the games that he's had in this series and Derrick Jones Jr. over the last couple of games that he's had now, why it's so important for them to be able to knock down shots when they have the opportunities to do so. Josh Green being able to do the same when he's had his opportunities to do so, because now it takes the Thunder out of what they want to do, because at some point you've got to start defending a P.J. Washington. You've got to start defending a Derrick Jones Jr., or at least paying attention to them more, because you simply can't draw an extra guy to Dončić, and then when he gets rid of it, another guy is going to be knocking down shots. You have to start shading more attention to the guys that are actually knocking down shots. And the Dallas Mavericks guys, in terms of Derrick Jones Jr. and others, have been doing that throughout the course of the series. That gets us to the third quarter, where the Mavericks were able to increase their lead to 11 at 60-49 with just in the first 3.5 minutes of that period. Daniel Gafford, a strong start to that third quarter. For the first 6 points of the period, Daniel Gafford scored. Eventually, the Mavericks were able to get it up to a 14-point lead at 65-51. Again, thanks to a P.J. Washington three-pointer. That eventually forced the Thunder timeout with just under 7 minutes left in the period, as the Mavericks outscored the Thunder 11-7 in the first 5.5 minutes of the period. P.J. Washington, who didn't have a point until the second half, got things going. He had 5 straight points. He had a nice dunk to be able to get himself going a little bit off a tap-out assist from Josh Green, who continues to make hustle plays in this series. When we talk about winning 50-50 balls, winning the loose balls, being able to get tap-out offensive rebounds and assists, I thought that was a terrific play by Josh Green, getting the tap-out offensive rebound assist to P.J. Washington, who eventually was able to take it to the rim for a dunk, and then he was able to knock down that three-pointer, as we mentioned, to eventually get the lead up to 14 at 65-51, forcing that Thunder timeout. And then Luka Doncic continuing to do what he does, knocking down another couple of threes in that third quarter, drilling one from the top of the key, again, off of an offensive rebound, this time from Derek Lively in the assist. When the Mavericks have been able to rebound the basketball, especially on the offensive glass, that's when they have their advantage against the Oklahoma City Thunder. And I mentioned it a little bit earlier in the show, where the Thunder were out-rebounded by the Mavericks 46-33 in this game. And there were plenty of times, especially as the game went on, where the Mavericks found their footing in terms of their offensive rebounding. And I mentioned 2 examples there with Josh Green in terms of the tip-out offensive rebound that he had that led to the P.J. Washington dunk. And then Derek Lively, a big offensive rebound, getting it to Dončić. That had him up again at 15 at 68-53 with 5.5 minutes left in the third. And then Josh Green himself knocking down a three-pointer to get the lead back up to 15 at 71-56 with just over 4 minutes left in that third period. So you're looking at what Josh Green and the effect that he was having, whether it was knocking down three-pointers, making winning plays in terms of the hustle that he had. This is what it takes to win a championship. Contributions from other guys, but also the guys understanding their role and fulfilling that role based on what they're needing to be done to win games. Then Kyrie Irving was able to hit a three-pointer as the Mavericks were able to maintain a double-digit lead going into the fourth quarter. That Kyrie Irving three-pointer came with just under 2.5 minutes left in the third. That three-pointer made it 74-60 as they were up 14. And then Luka Doncic, in one of the signature moments of this game, drilling a three-pointer on the left wing on the step back over Lu Dort, staring him down, feeding off the crowd in Oklahoma City, who had a lot to say, even with their T-shirts with pacifiers on them, with Luka Doncic's face on the picture as well. And you heard Luka Doncic at the beginning of the show. You know how much he feeds off of that animosity from the Oklahoma City crowd. And, of course, Lu Dort, who has been extremely physical at times, questionably physical at times with Luka Doncic, grabbing and pulling at his jersey, trying to make things difficult for him, trying to get under Doncic's skin. You know how good that had to feel for Dončić to be able to knock down that step-back three-pointer over Dort, staring him down in the face. That came with 40 seconds left in the third period. Again, the Mavericks maintaining a 12-point lead going into the fourth quarter. Mavericks held the Thunder to 22% from three and 43% overall from the field. P.J. Washington, as we mentioned, had 5 points. Luka Doncic had 6 in that third quarter. SGA, he did have 14 points in the third quarter as he scored 14 of what would be the 23 points for the Thunder, but it really didn't have much of an effect because of the way that the Mavericks were executing at the right time based off of the way that they were making shots in that third quarter. Then we get to the fourth quarter. Things got a little bit interesting, obviously, for the Mavericks in that fourth quarter. Unfortunately, as they were turning the ball over way too much, they were up by 12, obviously, to begin the fourth quarter. They were able to eventually increase their lead to 18 at 89-71 with 2.5 minutes into the period as Luka Doncic really started to put his stamp on the game. He scored 8 of the Mavericks' first 10 points, including 8 straight at one point as they outscored the Thunder 10-4 and led by 18 with 9.5 minutes left in the final frame that forced a Thunder timeout. And you felt like at that point, because I want to put a pin in that, because it felt like at that point the Mavericks were about to run away and hide in game number 5. Up by 18, Luka Doncic puts his stamp on the fourth quarter in the beginning, scoring 8 straight points, being able to really establish himself offensively the way that he was able to get there. Got an and one on Lu Dort with a tough bank shot. He would make that free throw to increase the lead to 15 and then hit another three-pointer at the top of the key off of a Kyrie Irving assist. And you're feeling like at that particular moment of the game, the Mavericks are going to run away with this thing and be able to hopefully get Dončić some extra rest, knowing that you've got the extra day off going into Saturday's Game 6. But unfortunately, the Mavericks started to play with their food a little bit. The Thunder would go on what would be a 10-0 run. The Mavericks had 4 turnovers midway through that fourth quarter, and unfortunately was not protecting the basketball. We've talked about this time and time again. You cannot be sloppy with the basketball against the Oklahoma City Thunder. They turn you over more than any team in the league. They lead the league in steals. They lead the league in blocks, and they know how to be able to finish in transition. And the Mavericks saw what was an 18-point lead eventually be cut down to 8 at 89-81 after a Jalen Williams basket midway through the fourth quarter. So a little bit of trepidation is starting to set in because you know how well the Mavericks have been playing. You saw how well they played in Game 4 and then ultimately gave it away in the fourth quarter. Was there some deja vu potentially coming for the Mavericks? But they were able to withstand the run and even the turnovers and mistakes that they made as the Thunder eventually cut it down to what would be a 7-point deficit at 90-83 with 5 minutes left. But the biggest shot of the game came from P.J. Washington. As I just mentioned, the Thunder had cut it down to 7 at 90-83 with 5 minutes left. But P.J. Washington hit a three-pointer to put them back up by 10 at 93-83. And that came with just under 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. And you could feel a sense of relief, breathing a sigh of relief, because that shot that he hit established a double-digit lead once again. And the Mavericks were able to finish it off from there. Much like how they were not able to do in game number 4, they were able to knock down their free throws in the fourth quarter, particularly Derek Lively, when you saw what he was able to do from the free throw line, going 5 of 6 in the fourth quarter, at times with the Thunder employing the hack-a-Lively strategy. Lively, the rookie, simply wasn't having it, and the Mavericks defensively locked down again in that fourth quarter, holding the Thunder to just 18% from 3, and they shot 48% overall from the field. But Shai Gilgeous-Alexander only had 6 points in the final frame. One of the things that I talked about going into Game 5 is that you had to find a way to contain Shai Gilgeous-Alexander to allow him to not have the effect that he had, especially when he scored or assisted on 20 of the 30 points, the 20 of the final 30 points of Game 4 to really help steal Game 4 against the Mavericks. They did a great job of containing him in this game in the moments that mattered most, even with him having the over 30 points than he had in the game. But the Mavericks able to withstand that run of the Thunder, and P.J. Washington's 3 was absolutely massive to establish what was a 10-point lead once again. And again, some of the moments that you look at from the second half, we mentioned what Daniel Gafford was able to do in terms of scoring 4 of the 6 points, first 6 points of that third quarter. Jaden Hardy, again, with some good minutes in the second half as well, able to work the pick and roll, was able to work with Derek Lively to increase the Mavericks lead at 12, a minute and a half into that third period. Tim Hardaway Jr. hitting a floater at the beginning of the fourth quarter to push the Mavericks lead up to 15 to really settle things down to begin that fourth quarter there. And, of course, Luka Doncic putting his stamp on this game at the end of the game with 54 seconds left. That massive block that he had on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, sending a message to the Oklahoma City Thunder, punctuating what was a fabulous night for this Mavericks team to be able to get that win. The biggest and best block that he's had all season long, taking it out on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in transition. That pretty much sealed it for the Mavericks. You saw Derrick Jones Jr., who also had an incredible block on a Chet Holmgren three-pointer in the fourth quarter, then was able to finish with the dunk in transition that put him up 13 at 99-86 with 2 minutes left in that fourth quarter. Everyone, that is the theme of this particular show as far as the Mavericks winning Game 5. Everyone doing something to contribute to this 12-point win, whether it was Josh Green making hustle plays, winning 50-50 balls, Derek Lively knocking down 5 of 6 free throws in the fourth quarter. He had a big double-double as well. Derrick Jones Jr. with the 19 points that he had. Even Kyrie Irving being able to hit some shots to be able to help stabilize things for the Mavericks, and, of course, being led by their superstar and Luka Doncic. This is the kind of win that gives you indication and confidence that they're playing with a championship mindset, because everyone had to contribute to this win, whether it be making sure that you were collecting the offensive and defensive rebounds that you had to in crucial moments, executing the defensive strategy in terms of making sure that you're rotating out on these terrific Oklahoma City shooters who made a change in this game by sitting Josh Giddey and not starting him and starting Isaiah Joe. The Mavericks did a good job of handling that adjustment by Mark Dagnall and the Oklahoma City Thunder to where it really didn't have much an effect. But the only thing, if you had any criticism coming out of Game 5, is that they played with their foot a little bit, saw the lead get cut down to 7. But again, P.J. Washington stepping up in a big moment. He also had a double-double in this game as well, executing when they needed to most to be able to get this win and now put themselves in position to have a closeout game on Saturday night at the American Airlines Center as they're now up 3-2. But the theme of Game 5, it was a total team effort led by their superstar and Luka Doncic, and you give them a ton of credit for being able to put that devastating Game 4 loss behind them, to be able to have the mental makeup and focus to come out in Game 5 and be able to punch the Thunder in the mouth and be able to take Game 5 on the road to be able to set themselves up to close it out in Game 6 on Saturday. Huge victory, and credit all around to this terrific team that continues to be led by their defense, and most importantly, their mental makeup gives you confidence that no matter what situation they may find themselves in or how they may play at certain times, they will refocus and get themselves back in a spot to be able to handle their business going forward. And that starts with the top, with Jason Kidd, who, again, give him credit for pushing the button and getting Jaden Hardy in there and giving him an opportunity to make some plays in the Dante Exum minutes. And he absolutely delivered for the Mavericks and was a plus in this game for what he was able to do throughout the course of his minutes. And I thought Jaden Hardy really provided a terrific lift for them. But again, Derrick Jones Jr. for the second straight game, 17 points in Game 4, 19 in Game 5, really was able to be a difference maker with his defense and his ability to knock down shots, especially from the corner three, where we know the Thunder are going to continue to give up that shot. And the Mavericks absolutely made them pay for what they were able to do in knocking down their threes in game number 5. So the Mavericks win 104-92, take a 3-2 series lead with an opportunity, just like they did in the first round series against the Clippers, to be able to win at home in front of their home crowd at the American Airlines Center, to punch their ticket to the Western Conference Finals for the second time in 3 years. And you think about what this team has gone through. Went to the Western Conference Finals 2 years ago, was a lottery team last year, and now on the brink of getting back to the Western Conference Finals again. And if they do, they will meet the winner, of course, of the Nuggets and the Timberwolves as that series is concerned. But the Mavericks take it by 12 on the road, 104-92 over the Oklahoma City Thunder, as the Mavericks now get ready to try and close out OKC in their home building on Saturday night. That game will tip off at 7 p.m. at the AAC. I'll have the pregame show on the Dallas Mavericks Radio Network at 6:30 p.m. That'll do it for this episode of Inside the Mavs. Again, thank you so much for joining me on the show. I appreciate you supporting the show. And if you're watching this on my YouTube channel at Kevin Gray Sports, make sure you like and comment on the video. Let me know how you're feeling about the Dallas Mavericks. And also, if you're listening to the podcast, give it a 5-star rating and write a review for it while you're there. And you can find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartRadio, and wherever you get your podcasts for free. And make sure you follow me on Twitter at Kevin Gray Sports. This has been Inside the Mavs, presented by Aura.